Hi everybody, welcome to this virtual workshop. We are going to be talking today about creating culturally proficient schools. My name is Dr. Damiana Piles and I am working with Dr. Precious Madiwa at Appalachian State University on a mini grant partnership. And we are looking at different ways for you to be able to think about being culturally proficient and working through trying to help you as you work toward that goal of yours about cultural proficiency. With this workshop, we conducted a SWOT analysis and looked at the ways that you perceive yourself as a teacher and as part of the school. And we're going to define characteristics of cultural proficiency and look at different kinds of worldviews and look at different ways of thinking about maintaining and building a more culturally competent school. So overall, that's what we're going to be doing in this workshop. What we did to try to help to think through this to kind of get a baseline is you all took a survey in December or in the fall of last year, and we looked at that survey to get an idea of what the strengths are in your school, the weaknesses are in your school, the opportunities, and the threats to building cultural competence for your school. And so we've put that together here. First of all, kudos to you because you have great things going on, and there are lots of good things to look at. With this SWOT analysis, we encourage you to consolidate on your strengths, to continue to have those and to work on them and to build on them. The SWOT did reveal some weaknesses for improvement and some opportunities for learning and growth, and so we'll look at those as well. And then we'll look at some threats to that as well, some ways of thinking that could help you, that could not help you into meeting your goals. Some of your strengths, and there are a lot of them, are your vision and mission that you acknowledge and celebrate and validate cultural heritages of students. You have a good vision and mission statement that helps to teach students to know and to praise their own and one another's cultural heritages. Your teachers and staff understand the culture of all students, including minorities. You promote a sense of kindredness and reciprocal responsibility. This is a big one. Number 5, most teachers are knowledgeable about their discipline and show deep passion for teaching and content. This is one of your greatest strengths, and over 80% of you said that this is true. So this is a great strength for you. And teachers and school leadership accept responsibility for culturally diverse students and go beyond the school day in the way that it's organized. Another strength that you have is that you enable minority students to be open and flexible in expressing their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Teachers and staff understand the struggles that minorities face in education. The school leadership is committed to building a culturally competent school. The work of students on display reflects all ethnic groups. The school provides spaces and relationships where students feel recognized, respected, and valued. The library resources cater to the needs of racial and ethnic minorities, and you can answer the question, who I am as an educator with great confidence. I think overwhelmed, this is how, again, not our assessment of your school, but how you all feel that your school is doing at this point. So it's your perceptions of where your school is. And definitely overall you feel that you have a very strong focus on teaching and on teaching excellence, and so I think that is a great strength. Some of the weaknesses we found were looking at how teachers use culturally specific or relevant pedagogies to reach all students. That isn't always the case. In your school, there was a proportional representation of all ethnicities in AP classes and STEM subjects. So that is actually not happening in your school according to your perceptions. All teachers and staff, regardless of experience, are highly culturally competent. So a lot of you felt that was not the case. As teachers in the school, we do not see color. We just teach students. A lot of people, over 80% of you, said yes to this, which is actually color blindness, which we'll talk about later and talk about in different videos, and why that is actually not a marker of cultural proficiency. When I teach, I mostly prefer primarily my own cultural preferences. A lot of you said yes, you prefer your own cultural references and experiences only. We believe that hard work reaps benefits for all students, and we'll talk about that in terms of epistemology and what that means later in another video. Some opportunities for you this is a lot of people said because there's not been much of a shift, there's no need to be culturally competent. So a lot of you felt that there's no need to even be talking about it, which shows a lack of recognition of this issue, and especially in terms of how demographics shift. I consider your school to be highly cultural competent. That's an opportunity for you. That's good. Teachers are committed to learning about cultures of the students they teach, which is a good opportunity. In our school, student achievement gaps based on race, culture, and gender are very narrow. Dropout rates for whites and minorities are somewhat the same. Graduation rates for whites and minorities are the same, and suspension rates. So basically, this last section is an opportunity for you to really look at those numbers and see, is that actually true? And to really look at that and say, well, what is actually happening in our school? Is it that they're dropping out before they get here? Do they drop out once they're here? What are these rates? And are these gaps actually very narrow? Are they not? So this is a reminder, I think, or an encouragement for you to look at these numbers to see if your perceptions of these is actually bears fruit, that it is actually true. And then threats. This should say threats. There are racial minorities that represent they're represented on your staff, and parents and students do not care about their teachers' education, their students' education. So there, more overwhelmingly number of you said that. Let's fix this. Said that racial minorities are not represented on your staff and faculty. Overwhelmingly, you all have one group of people, European Americans, and that's it. And so that is something to consider. That there are a lot of people of the same ethnic group who are in charge of the school and who are thinking that everything's okay. That may not actually be the case, right? Because this survey is all about perceptions. So it might be that there's no check on that there's no one else who's saying, yeah, actually there's some things that we could be doing better. So that's something to consider. And the idea that parents and some students just don't care about their child's education is actually a very common misconception. And so that's why it's under threats. So schools that are not culturally competent, when they make these kinds of statements, why should I learn about their culture? This is America. Let them learn about us. In my classroom, I don't see color. I treat all students the same. In our school, we do not see color. We just see students, teachers, and parents. This is color blindness. A teacher may say, I really want to be fair to my students, so I treat them all alike. Names of Asian, African, Spanish students are very hard to pronounce, so I give them an American name to make it easier for others. I do not want to appear racist, but I notice how many students from Yakin or wherever are the lowest quintile. Their parents did not even finish high school. So this is economic considerations here. I believe that hard work reaps benefits for all students. That does not recognize that there are additional barriers to particular students. Minority students appear to be incapable of handling AP classes because they're not represented in these classes, so it's blaming the students for lack of representation. Hispanic, African American, Jews, poor students are always complaining about injustices done to them. It's time to move on, as though that were possible, as though that they're the problem, right? They're the reason that things are not moving on. Their parents don't come to parent conferences because they don't care about the education of their children. Things are okay. There's no need to change the status quo because we live in a very rural and isolated county. So this is saying that we don't actually need to change anything because we are not really affected by it. So these are just statements that are commonly heard that are kind of signals to you that cultural competency might be something you want to work on. So when schools are not culturally competent, or they're saying a lot of these kinds of statements that we're talking about, we find that there's often a failure to honor and celebrate differences, that in actuality there's not that much honoring of differences. The educators are contributing to a sense of alienation and selective invisibility experienced by the students. That students are invisible. You may not know that something's happening because it's not so readily apparent to you all in your ethnic group. So they become invisible. Educators intentionally or unintentionally are promoting internalized feelings of oppression and inferiority in minority students. Educators sending the messages that there's something wrong or deficient with minority students' cultures and their culture needs fixing. You need to come to us. That's why you need to learn to be American, as though American is one thing, white, European. Minority students have to assimilate to the dominant culture to be functional, sending the message that the culture they bring is inferior and inhibits learning. Assimilation of the dominant culture, though well-intended, resulting in loss of cultural language and other cultural aspects long-term. they end up suffering marginality when they're rejected and do not fit into either their communities or the dominant cultural group. The more that they become, the more that they fit into white culture, the less they fit into their own culture. And in cultures, which we'll talk about with ethnic epistemologies and all that kind of thing in videos that we provide for you, their connections to their family are very, very important often. And so if they're moving away from their family to do better in school, sometimes that causes real conflict within them. And that can cause some real problems. Equity is ignored, but equality promoted. So the equality might be there, but it actually is not, turns out not to be fair to the students. The idea that hard work, so this is a big thing that we hear a lot about, where a lot of people are like, you just need to work hard and then you will succeed. But that's not actually true, because there's a lot of different variables that happen with students who are in minority groups. So sometimes there are lack of teachers who genuinely care for the holistic development of the student. They only care about teaching their own content, which we talk about in a video for you. There's a lack of access to opportunity. So that's why AP classes, that's why different kinds of STEM courses, this is why this kind of thing matters. It's about access to opportunity. Attendance and achievement data use, and so this is where you can look at your data to see what's actually happening in terms of attendance and what is going on. Sometimes there are low expectations for students. Sometimes they promote a culture of low expectations for minorities, or learned helplessness, helping them too much in different ways that actually aren't helping them. A recognition there's a lack of cultural capital by minorities. They may not know how to work within the school system. Sometimes that's something you have to teach them, and then they succeed. Values and epistemology of one's culture and lack of culturally relevant specific pedagogy. So this is a big thing. If you want to work toward making your pedagogies inclusive of everyone, and that really actually means culturally relevant specific pedagogies. It's not just teaching the curriculum to all students, it's actually teaching culturally relevant curriculum to all students, and that's something that you'll want to work toward as a school. So your goals are to offer culturally responsive pedagogy that's validating and affirming, comprehensive, multidimensional, empowering, transformative, and emancipatory for all students. And that is your goal. That is part of your mission, and you are working toward this. It's just about getting the skills and the mindset to be able to do that. So, given the SWOT analysis, the overarching question is, how is West Wilkes High School's teachers, students, and administrators doing in terms of promoting or addressing cultural destructiveness, cultural blindness, and cultural incapacity? So the overarching question, given the SWOT analysis, is how are you as teachers and students and administrators, how are you doing in terms of promoting or addressing cultural destructiveness, cultural blindness, and cultural incapacity, which is something we talk about in different videos. So how are you doing in terms of developing cultural proficiency and cultural competence? So we have some videos to help you to meet this goal. One looks at the epistemology of ethnic groups. One is a cultural competency continuum, where you can see where you fall within that continuum. And one is a reflective competence piece. So these are just strategies, some ways of thinking that might help you as you work toward your goal of educating all students and keeping all of your students and helping them to succeed. And so really, they're just ways of thinking and strategies and tools that you can think through and decide if you would like to use for your thinking about being culturally proficient. Here's the link for the virtual workshop, and we've also provided this to your administrators so that you can do this as you need and as you feel fit, as you see fit to work on this goal. But we just want to let you know that there are some really strong strengths in your schools, and there are just a few things to really think through as you work on that goal of meeting the needs of all of your students.